Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/KYHistoryPod. Welcome back, everybody, to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and I'm here with Trace Kirkwood, a Shelby County resident, and we're going to talk about some Shelby County history. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing this evening?
Doing good. Just so everybody knows that these are pre-recorded. We're recording in May. We've had a nice spring Kentucky day. Whenever you listen to this, though, it might be snowy, rainy, 90 degrees, 30 degrees. Who knows, right?
It can be all those in Kentucky in the same day.
Yeah, in the same day. That's right. That's right. But we're going to talk about some Shelby County history. Tell us a little bit about yourself, though, first, your Kentucky connection. You're born and raised here, but we've already talked a little bit about that. But just tell us about that.
Yeah. Let me clarify something. I was not born in Kentucky.
Oh, oopsie.
I'm in my 50th year of exile from the state of Florida, as I say.
Okay.
I was born in Miami, Florida, to a wayward Kentuckian and a wayward West Virginian. And
okay.
Like all Kentuckians, after they lived away long enough, there's something that goes off in their head that brings them back. Mm-hmm. And my parents gave up the warm, beautiful winters of South Florida to move to Louisville, Kentucky. And I was 6 years old when we moved up here. So I'm 56. So I've been here for 50 years. So it is my adopted home state. I make jokes about being a Floridian or a Floridian, Florida man, all those things. One of the things I've never lost, though, is the love of warm weather. But I grew up in Louisville. I graduated from Louisville Male High School in 1984. I think they were glad to see me go. I was not a very good student. I went to Western Kentucky University, where I flourished as a student and got a degree in history and also a BA in political science. And I stayed 2 more years and received my master's in history. And over the course of my career, which is now, when I think about it, it's fairly lengthy. I've been working professionally for 31 years. And I kind of stumble when I say that. But I started out working as an assistant curator of special collections at the Filson Historical Society, or in my day, it was called the Filson Club. And then I had a long career with the Kentucky Department for Libraries. Excuse me. I worked for a consulting firm in Lexington for 5 years as a research historian. And then I was an archivist for the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives for 16 years after that. And I had a very brief and tragic career in the field of sales. I was terrible at it. Never done it. And then I am now the historic district coordinator for the city of Shelbyville, Kentucky. And so for the first time in my career, I live and work in the same community. And not only that, I live in downtown Shelbyville. I can walk to my office.
Oh, wow.
And it's such an odd thing. For many years, I traveled all over the state of Kentucky, as I was telling you. I've been to every county. I've been to every city. I've been up and down every pig path in the state of Kentucky. Some places I shouldn't have been. I've been in trouble for trespassing before. And now I hardly ever leave downtown Shelbyville. A big adventure for my wife and me are to go to Kroger.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
So with the city of Shelbyville, the historic district coordinator, I oversee 315 historic structures. Downtown Shelbyville is a very beautiful and vibrant downtown with a lot of different architecture, historic architecture along the main street. And I work with property owners to preserve, protect, and restore those buildings, commercial buildings, and about 200 very historic homes, beautiful homes along Main Street. And I myself live in a historic home.
Oh, that's cool. That's real cool.
Yeah, nice old bungalow that sits off a little side street and on in downtown Shelbyville, real quiet neighborhood.
Mhm.
And so that,
That's
and
cool.
I have my wife Dana, and I have two children who are grown. My son Parkman is finished his freshman year at WKU, followed in the footsteps of his father. My
Mhm.
daughter, and if you could see my office right now, it has a bunch of stuff piled up in it. She is on just a few days away from taking a job with Utah State University and moving
Oh,
to Logan, Utah. We're getting ready to truck
wow.
her out there. So a big change.
Whew.
So
Yeah.
that's where I am in life right now.
Things are moving, right?
Things are moving. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, real quickly, just some basic info. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably know that Shelby County is named after Isaac Shelby, the first governor of Kentucky. It was founded in 1792. So not only did he become the governor, they said, "Hey, you're the first governor. We're going to name a county after you." And then also Shelbyville is also named after Isaac Shelby. Um, one of the counties that their county seat and their county is named after the same person. Um, a lot of those counties in Kentucky, the county is named after a person, but then another county's county seat is named after that same person. But
Right.
Shelby County is the
But we
same.
do have Simpsonville. We stole that from Simpson County.
That's right. That's right.
They got Franklin,
Yeah, that's
which is the county that Frankfurt's in. You know, it's all
yeah.
very messed up in Kentucky.
It is. It's yeah. But anyway, we'll kind of guess do a little overview of Shelby County, and I mean, there's many things to talk about. Like we said first, like we talked before we started, Squire Boone, of course, was one of the most known settlers in Shelby County. Um, but you go ahead and talk a little bit about the Long Run Massacre, all that kind of stuff, because
Yeah,
that's
well,
kind of one of the biggest, I guess, events in early Shelby
that
County
is
history.
known all around the state. It doesn't matter where
Mhm,
you go. It was I guess, in kind of a seminal event in Kentucky history. I mean, it was indicative of that relationship between the settlers and the Native Americans in the state, and that brutal sort of relationship. And I tell people, I think a lot of people try to romanticize the pioneer period in Kentucky, but that was a brutal life. Those
oh
were
yeah.
rugged, tough people. We wouldn't modern people would not be able to relate to those men from that time. Guys
Mhm,
like Bland Ballard, one of my favorite characters out of pioneer Kentucky history,
mhm.
he was a tough guy. He was, I believe, if my memory serves me right, uh, he was at part of the long
The
of Floyd's defeat, and
mhm,
literally, I think he protected the rear flank of the fleeing of Floyd's fleeing men, and kind
mhm.
of single handedly did it.
Yeah,
Killed
and the River Raisin. I mean, he was up
and the
there
River
at
Raisin,
that
yes.
too.
And then he was also he lived a long time. I think he lived almost 100 years. He um, was later a state representative, I think a state senator from
Mhm.
Shelby County. And I try to think of, I love to amuse myself with thinking about Bland Ballard being in the General Assembly. Uh, People probably didn't cross him very much because he was a tough guy, and he's got a great legacy here in Shelby County. I go to church with one of his descendants who kind of looks
Oh,
like him.
wow.
Yeah,
That is so cool.
a guy named Ben Matthews is a
Mhm.
member of our church, and a direct descendant of Bland Ballard. Uh,
Wow.
so when he told me that, I was just like, well, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got a video about Bland Ballard on the YouTube channel, with county names, making a video about every county, every person the county is named after or thing. Because some counties aren't named after people, but he's one of the ones that we've done so far.
Yeah,
Very interesting, dude. Very cool.
yeah, yeah, definitely the epitome of a settler. I always joke when I talk to groups about Squire Boone. This might not make me very popular, but I say Shelby County got the smarter of the Boone brothers. Uh,
I agree.
I think a lot of the stories about Daniel is just that almost he was the accidental hero because he kind of
Hmm.
just stumbled into these situations and was clever enough to work his way out. But I always point out when you go to Boonesboro and you look where he first put the fort down in that swamp, and you know Richard Henderson came out and said, "Whoa, wait a second, let's put it up on the hill here." It makes a lot more sense to me. That's the epitome of Daniel. Well, so I tell people here in Shelby County, we got the smarter brother.
Yeah.
Except that he moved away. He went to Southern Indiana, and
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
I just recently spoke to a group in Shelby County called Leadership Shelby, a
Hmm.
very well respected yearly series of classes that prepare young people, young and old, to be
Hmm.
community leaders. And for a few years, the uh, it was rated very low in everything they do. They do history and arts day, and then they also do industry and agriculture. And I can't remember what all the different classes of government, uh,
Hmm.
and history. The history portion was ranked lowest by the students of Leadership Shelby for
Uh-huh.
several years in a row. So I went to the director of the Shelby County Historical Society, who I've got to be pretty good friends with. He his name is Brian Cushing, an excellent young director of our historical society. And I said, "Look, let's get away from things that fail and kind of take a different tact on this." So I put together something that I've always, since I've been in Shelby County, something that I think is very important, and that's the understanding of kind of the economy. And I'm not a Marxist historian. I'm a historian, but I'm not a Marxist. As a matter of fact, I'm more of a somebody like Frederick Jackson Turner, a Turnerian.
Uh,
And we're a dying breed and scorned by the Marxist historians. But I took a very Marxist approach to Shelby County history, and I showed them. I'm going to show you this before I get into particulars. I'm sorry, I'm a little disorganized here, and they maybe took all my printouts. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this. Let me.
a little up. Okay. Yeah.
That is a graph of Shelby County's population from 1820 to 2020. 200 years of
Uh,
population, and I started at 1820 purposely because uh, large portions of Shelby County were split away. And before that, Henry County and what is now
Oldham
Oh,
or
well, Oldham came later. Uh, I guess can't think of the name of the county that Bedford's in right now. Uh,
Trimble.
Trimble. Those were
Yep.
split away, and that took a good portion of Shelby County's population at the time with them. So in 1820, where's my little notes here? In 1820, Shelby County had 21,047 people in it. Then they split away Oldham and Spencer counties. And
Hmm.
in 1830, they had 19,000. And I promise I'm not going to go decade by decade on this. Uh, so that for for uh, for 150 years, that was about the size of Shelby County population wise. But I'll come back to that. I know we want to start. I think we want to go chronologically through this rather than
Yeah.
subject. But I'm going to get into that agricultural stuff
Hey, that sounds
a
good.
little bit and growth and where we are now. I will
Hmm.
kind of wrap up with the fact that Shelby County is in a tremendous watershed in its history right now. And that was my point to these young leaders that day was,
Hmm.
look, you're going to have to become a leader of this county at a time when we're disconnecting from our history and we don't really understand where we're headed. So I was trying to give them an understanding of what the county is. So the early settlers, Squire Boone is the most prominent of the
Hmm.
early settlers, and I get a little mixed up on dates of when he was here, early
Hmm.
1780s. he built a station called Painted Stone Station out. It's about 2.5 miles north of the city of Shelbyville. It's along Clear Creek. Clear Creek meanders through a good portion of the county, forms almost like a necklace around the city of Shelbyville. If you're in downtown Shelbyville, you're surrounded on 3 sides by Clear Creek, and it's not really noticeable. But Squire Boone had a station there, and it was a successful station. And then it became very vulnerable because it was an outlier from the stations over along Beargrass Creek and Harrods Creek, Floyd's Fork Creeks over and closer to the Ohio River. So in fear of coming under an Indian attack, they evacuated the station and started headed for Lynn's Station over in Jefferson County, what is now Jefferson County. And along the way, and I'm not real good with dates, but I think 1782. I don't know.
Yeah.
On the way there, when they reached Long Run Creek, as they came down the road towards Long Run Creek, a band of Huron Indians attacked them. Now, Hurons were unusual in this area because they were more of a northern tribe, but they were being pushed out by the French and some of the English settlements up in what is now Canada. So they were probably migratory, looking for a place, and so they came across these white settlers and attacked and killed several of them. They became a melee as these settlers fled towards Lynn's Station. Over across what is now the Jefferson County line. And it happened right about where Jefferson County, Shelby County line is today, along US 60, Shelbyville Road, as it's known. There's historical markers up near where the road goes over the creek there, commemorating the Long Run Massacre, as it is known.
Yeah.
And then also Floyd's defeat, because the next day, or maybe a day or two later, John Floyd led men out from Lynn's Station and to go basically bury the dead or bring back the dead and gather up whatever belongings were strewn along the trail. And what was unusual, what they didn't expect, was that the Hurons were still there. And when Floyd's men came upon the scene, the Hurons attacked them and chased them back up the way, killed several, including John Floyd, who's buried in a little area called Eastwood. There's a marker there for John Floyd and John Floyd's defeat.
John Floyd, he's a pretty big early frontiersman that not a lot of people really know about.
Well, he was a prolific surveyor. In Jefferson, what is now, I keep using the county names, but in Jefferson County, some in Shelby County, but even over in central Kentucky, John Floyd did a lot of surveying. He was an excellent surveyor too. He's one of the few that really kind of avoided a whole bunch of shingled claims. He met his end there along Long Run Creek. Yeah. So that's a little unusual. But there were other settlers in Shelby County, and I'm not going to name them all because I could probably spend the whole evening talking about settlers. There was another guy who had a station, Whitaker Station. His name was Aquila Whitaker. Apparently, in 1807, after everything was settling down out here on the frontier, he killed a man and fled to Indiana. So, there's a pattern here. Squire Boone didn't kill anybody to Indiana. But there was another settler in that very same area. There was like a string of 3 stations: Painted Stone, which was Squire Boone's station, and then Owen's station, and then Whitaker Station. They're not on the same water course, but roughly in the same area, Shelby County. And Owen's Station was started by a guy named Brackett Owen, who I've taken a particular interest in. And I've done starting to do a lot of research. We're going to write an article about Brackett Owen. And when I talk about Owen, I joke and say he didn't leave. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't get mad at anybody. He moved out here from Virginia, started a station, built a log house, and then ended up building what we think maybe is the first brick dwelling in Shelby County, which is now in ruins. As a matter of fact, in a project with the Historical Society, we just shot a video amongst the ruins of the Brackett Owen house. But Brackett Owen died in 1802, and that house was built sometime between 1796 and 1802. Now, he had some big land dispute with Aquilla Whitaker. Their surveys adjoined one another, and that was settled in 1796 in the courts. And Aquilla Whitaker, got clear title to his land, and Brackett Owen got clear title to his land. And what a lot of people don't understand about log houses is that they were the original mobile home. They purposely built them to be mobile. A lot of log houses you see probably aren't standing on the original spot where they were built. Because, man, they'd put those things up on runners, hitch a team of mules to them, and pull them away and take them somewhere else. And they wouldn't build a brick house until they were absolutely sure that they had clear title to that land.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky, that could be a very tricky thing. I'm not going to go into the shingling of surveys and all that nightmare. What that did, those land disputes left a wonderful record of that era in Kentucky history, because you can go into courthouses and find all those court cases of the squabble after squabble over land, a particular spot of land that maybe 6 people claimed. And that was the case with Brackett Owen. But like I said, Whitaker apparently killed somebody, fled. Owen he just stayed here and died. And then his son Abraham Owen was killed at the River Raisin in 1811. And then that tract fell into state and family hands. I'm not going to go into that, but so that's kind of a nutshell of the pioneer period of Shelby County. There were other stations around. We had the Dutch station up in the northern part of the county, and a couple others around, but those 3 are the most well-known stations. By the way, I forgot to say this: the first county court of Shelby County in 1792 was held at Brackett Owen's house, not the brick house. A lot of county history says that brick house was the home to the court, but that's not the case. In 1792, there's no way he had a brick house on that tract of land. I'm about 95% sure that was the case. And so they probably, in a log house that was likely salvaged from parts of the station that he had built just yards away from where he had where the brick house ended up. So, that's the pioneer portion.
Yeah. And well, you talk about the survey, and that was all over, and that was the big issue with Daniel and Squire as well. Some of the land disputes, which I'm beginning to think Daniel Boone was probably not the best surveyor, because he had a lot of issues coming up, which, I mean, you can expect. Hey, Johnny came and did the survey for me. He said it was to the roll of white oaks or whatever it might be, and then somebody else came to the other survey, said no, it's to this, and they get crossed over. Interesting thing: the city of Mount Vernon, whenever it was surveyed, back 1790 something, there were 3 people who all claimed the same areas, and they all had to go to court over it and figure it all out. So it was very common.
Well, the little interesting tidbit: 7th Street in Shelby County is the dividing line between two surveys. And it was kind of a main street early on, and so Shelbyville was created in 1792. So in a way, it was a pioneer town, and from all accounts that I can tell, that the main street near Clear Creek, like I said, the Clear Creek kind of forms a necklace around the city of Shelbyville. You can go whatever direction, except if you go west, you don't hit the creek. But if you go north, south, or east, you're going to have to cross Clear Creek at some point. The main street lined with log houses, and this is, I talk a lot about this since I'm the historic district coordinator of the city of Shelbyville. In different eras, the city looked very different, and people would be shocked at the way it appeared at times. There is a log house that stands on Main Street, but it's up in it's west of 10th Street and close to 11th Street, as a matter of fact. And people say that is an original log house. And it may very well be original, but I seriously doubt that it was built there. What I think is
Yeah.
that it was built down by the creek, on First or Second Street in East Shelbyville, and they got tired of the creek flooding them every year, so they hitched a mule
Moved it
team to
down.
it, dragged it up Main Street, and stopped it there. That's probably where the mule got tired, and said, "Well, we'll just
Yeah.
here." And,
Yeah.
and by the way, if you ever pick up the book Blue Highways, written by the pen name Least Heat Moon, his name was William Trogdon, I believe. Uh, on his journey around the United States, his first stop uh, was Shelbyville, Kentucky, and he
Wow.
took a picture of that log house that I'm talking about on Main Street. And there's three gentlemen standing. Two of them are standing in front of it. One of them is up in one of the windows. They were restoring the house at the time. And one of those guys is a friend of mine named Bob Andriott, who I've got to know since I moved to Shelby County. This house that I'm sitting in was at one time Bob Andriott's house.
Oh.
And so that's how I got to be friends with him, was that we live in the same, we've lived in the same house. And so that's pretty cool. So if any of your listeners or viewers have that book, or see it in a used
Hmm.
bookstore, it's a beautifully written book. Uh, you can see the log cabin I'm talking about. So Shelbyville, as it developed, eventually they tore down or moved or burned or whatever a lot of those log houses, and then built federal style brick structures along Main Street. That's not what we have today. A handful of those survive. Um,
Hmm.
the but mostly they got tired of those. They knocked them down, and as the city embraced the economy of the railroad, we have a lot of structures in Shelbyville, or of the Italianate style. And I know you're supposed to say Italianate, but I'm from Kentucky and I refuse to say
It's hard.
Italianate. And yeah, I saw it once written by a Kentuckian, Italian dash eight, the number eight. I was like, oh, that's like B9. And, yeah. Anyway, uh, and even the people that had federal houses, like I said, we still have some of the federal style houses along our main streets here. They put Italianate features on them,
Mhm.
and it's an interesting kind of quirk of Shelbyville architecture.
What
So
is
uh,
there any what's the oldest structure still in Shelby County?
there's
Do
a
you
house at
know?
the corner of Third and Main that we feel pretty confident that it was built in 1819. That's
Okay.
in Shelbyville, and then down on that block, there's a couple other structures that were built in 18 teens or early 1820s. Now in Shelbyville, we just redesigned our Sixth Street, turned it into a pedestrian commons area, um,
Hmm.
and the oldest commercial structure in Shelbyville stands on that street, and we believe it was built in 1825, and
Wow.
it has a very federal look to it. And
Yeah.
it's attached to a building that is the second oldest commercial structure in Shelbyville, that was built in 1857. Um,
Wow. That's pretty
so
cool.
yeah, and like I said, both of those structures. Well, the old federal style, they tacked on this Italianate style trim work to over the doors of it, and then of course the one in 1857 was built in that style.
Yeah.
So it tells an interesting story about our town.
Hmm. Hmm. So I guess as we were talking too, moving out of the pioneer sort of stage, and I mean again, you know, at, until 1792, Shelby County was part of Jefferson County, and then the other counties, I think Henry County and Trimble County were split off of Shelby
Split
County.
off. Yeah, in the 1790s, some
Yeah,
1799 or something like that.
yeah, yeah, and so then it pretty much got smaller as many well as all the counties did over the years. So moving on after that, what would be the next kind of big thing? I mean, as far as Shelby
Well,
County history.
uh, Shelby County's history was very consistent through the antebellum period. What I always quick to tell people, this county was an agricultural juggernaut in the state of Kentucky. It
Mhm.
rivaled the inner bluegrass counties that were, so heavily agricultural, like Fayette and Bourbon. Scott, Woodford. Uh, those inner bluegrass counties were agricultural juggernauts themselves, but Shelby County rivaled and often outpaced them in production of agricultural materials. And every category, when you look at the agricultural census and the antebellum period for Shelby County is always near the top of production of everything across the board. Um, the the number of horses, the number of sheep, the number of swine, the number of cattle, and then the bushels of corn produced. It was that was our economy here in Shelby County. The Shelbyville was a very small city, and then Simpsonville was even smaller, basically a dog patch at this
Yeah.
time. And same with the other towns around Shelby County. And those even Shelbyville was a farm to market sort of town. That's where people brought uh, their surplus crops into Shelbyville to sell. And but the one of the big things in Shelby County in the antebellum period, it was a hemp producing county. Um, and again, it rivaled. Woodford County was the standout in hemp production, but Shelby County approached those inner bluegrass counties and the production of hemp, and that was a mainstay of the agricultural economy here for many decades, along with corn. And now, but the Bourbon Trail, Shelbyville is in the middle of the Bourbon Trail. We have two distilleries here. Really, kind of a third one just opened, possibly a fourth coming. Um, but people on the Bourbon Trail stay here in Shelbyville because it's easy access to Lawrenceburg, Frankfort, Bardstown, Louisville, all the big bourbon producing areas. So I often get questioned about, well, was there bourbon production? Did they distill bourbon in Shelby County? I said, you bet they did. But bourbon production was an agricultural pursuit, considered an agricultural pursuit in the antebellum period. Probably every farm had a still on them, and they produced bourbon for their own consumption and maybe sell a little bit of surplus, but they weren't. They were not. It wasn't taxed and it wasn't regulated or anything like that. So they, it's you don't have exact numbers of how they were produced, and that's what they did with the surplus corn, because the corn would rot trying to get it to market. Always a mainstay in Shelby County agricultural production. I'm gonna grab some notes here. As I get older, I can't remember things very well. But okay, so one of the things that people don't that I discovered people don't understand is that they think that Shelby County was a tobacco producer all through its history, and it really, what people up here don't understand is that West Kentucky, the West Kentucky counties were producing millions of pounds of tobacco in the antebellum period, and in 1850, Shelby County produced a whopping 221,000 pounds of it, which is dwarfed by a whole bunch of counties up in West Kentucky. So it wasn't always a part of our economy. Hemp was a much more important part of the economy. And I can't remember how many tons that they produced here, but they measured it. They produced so much of it that they measured it in tons in Shelby County. And 46, the county produced 46 tons of hemp in 1850.
Wow.
Which is someplace like Woodford County probably dwarfs that number. They probably produced 100 some odd tons of it, but Shelby County was probably in the top 5 or 6 of hemp producing counties. And of course, Kentucky was the number one hemp producing area in the world at the time. Well, in Russia, they maybe produced a lot of hemp too, but in the world that we know, yeah. But in 1850, there were 76,000 swine in Shelby County. There's more. Everybody associates this county with horses. 7,000 horses. 76,000 pigs.
Pigs. Wow.
And most of them had 4 legs. Yeah.
No,
And
I was,
and
I was,
the cash value of the farms in Shelby County was number 3 in the state in 1850 at
uh-huh.
5.9 million, almost $6 million
Yeah.
in value. So that's where we were agriculturally in
Mhm.
1850. Well, I don't know, in your discussion with other counties, burley tobacco didn't really come onto the scene until the 1860s in southern Ohio. As much as it's associated with Kentucky, it was actually a Ohio creation. Typically, Ohio creates it, and we just make it better. Yeah.
Exactly.
So by 1880, in 1880, interesting, Shelby County produced 319 tons of hemp in 1880. But
Wow.
tobacco was starting to come onto the scene. Um, Shelby County in 1880 produced 620,000 pounds of tobacco. So that, it tripled its production, almost tripled its production in 30 years. Interestingly, Henry County, our neighbor to the north, in 1880 produced over 4 million pounds of burley tobacco. So
Wow.
it was spreading. It was spreading out
Mhm.
from its creation in Ohio, and it was starting to sweep across the state. Now that really changes because in 1900, by 1900, Shelby County was produced 6.4 million pounds of tobacco.
Wow.
So when I talk about Shelby County history, I talk a lot about the adaptive farming, the adaptive agriculture in the state.
Mhm.
This county and agriculturally has reinvented itself multiple times. Now, it wasn't entirely agriculture. Shelbyville developed some industry at the time, but so much of Shelbyville's economy was that farm to market, market to farm sort of economy.
Yeah.
A lot
Trade.
of farm implements sold, a lot of farm goods were sent out of Shelbyville, especially as the railroads developed. Shelbyville was blessed with having the Louisville Nashville line going through it. Not one of their big main lines, but still a very active line. And then the Southern Railroad also still goes through Shelbyville. As a matter of fact, if you might eventually hear a Norfolk Southern engine go through town here in a minute. It's about time for them to get cranking up, moving out of Louisville.
We're going to stop our discussion right there about Shelby County history. And again, we want to thank Trace Kirkwood for coming on and talking a little bit about Shelby County's history. And we were going to continue next week. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/KYHistoryPod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. We're always seeking to find more Kentucky history so we can bring it to you, the viewers, the listeners. We want all the stories and all the events from Kentucky's great history to be told and shared everywhere.